is there a meaning to life? Does life have any objective meaning, value, or purpose? Now, if you're a Christian watching this, chances are you'll say, yes, life does have objective meaning, value, and purpose. But if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, your answers may be mixed. Some of you might say, yeah, I don't need God to have objective meaning, value, and purpose in life. Of course my life is meaningful. Of course it has value and purpose. Some of you may say, no, actually, God doesn't exist, and really, there's no objective meaning, value, and purpose. Any meaning or value I have is just subjective. We just make up our own value as we go along. We make up our own purposes as we go along. And some of you, if you don't believe in God, may just say, well, I don't know. It's just an open question. I'm exploring. I'm not sure. But some philosophers, including atheistic philosophers, have argued that if God doesn't exist, life lacks objective meaning, value, and purpose. They've argued that life is objectively meaningless. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't make up our own subjective meaning and kind of find things that give us purpose and make us feel good. Great, but objectively speaking, there's no objective meaning, value, or purpose to life. And typically, they'll explore three things, one from our past, one from our present, and one from our future to kind of unpack and support this idea of life lacking meaning, value, and purpose. The problem sometimes called the absurdity of life without God. Life without meaning, value, and purpose is just absurd, and the absurdity of life without God is based on these three things. So the first one I want to kind of open up and explore today is this idea that our very existence, our bodies, are just a result of biochemical fluke, biology and physics working together, doing their thing, throwing the dice of probability, and just by fluke, here we are. And if we're just a result of fluke, in what sense can our life be purposeful? In what sense can we find meaning in life if we are just a product of biochemical fluke? And in the present, our bodies are just made of atoms. And if you deny that God exists, typically you'll say that human beings just are their bodies. There's nothing more to us than the physical atoms from which we're made. But atoms in their own right don't have value. So we're no more valuable than the atoms from which we're made. We have no objective value. We are just a collection of physical stuff. This idea is sometimes called nihilism. Nihilism is the idea that physical materials are kind of reducible to the particles from which they're made. And if we are just reducible to the particles from which we're made, why think we have any more value? Why think there's any greater purpose? And the third problem, and sorry guys if this is getting super depressing, but I want to unpack this a little bit more before we bring it home and explore the question from the other angle. The third option is about the future, the third line of evidence. So in the future, we're all doomed to both individual and collective destruction. Some people put their hope on the idea that maybe they could be cryogenically frozen, or maybe medical advances will just be so great that they'll be able to preserve our bodies and we'll just keep living forever, and they hope that they'll find some kind of long-term transient purpose in the idea of just being around forever. But that's not likely to happen, and even if it did happen, physics shows us that the universe is going downhill. The universe is heading towards an inevitable fate. In around 7.5 billion years, the sun is going to expand so much that it's going to gobble up the inner planets, including the planet Earth. So our tiny little home here on the planet Earth is going to be gobbled up in about 7.5 billion years. Sorry if this is getting too depressing, guys, but just stick with me. There's more to this story. In around 100 trillion years, the universe is going to die in what's called the heat death. So basically, entropy has just been increasing all the way through the life of the universe, and it'll continue increasing and increasing. And in around 100 trillion years, they think that the stellar phase of the universe, the process of star formation, will no longer be possible. The stellar phase will be over. And stellar phase is that section of the universe's life where star formation is possible. Why? Because all of the atoms will just be so far expanded that gravity is no longer going to be able to bring the clouds of gas and dust together to form nuclear fusion, which occurs in stars. Now, if you think about it, in the future there seems to be very, very little hope, either for us individually or collectively. So again, this idea of having some kind of external value, some kind of greater purpose, seems to shrivel to nothing when we think about the fact that our lives are just these transient passing blink of an eye events happen on this little rock, which is eventually going to be gobbled up by its star in a universe that's going to die a heat death. Okay, now we've gone through these different lines of evidence. I want to kind of open this question up and ask, is life really objectively without meaning, value or purpose? Well, I think not. I think we can go for more than just subjective purpose. I think there is objective purpose and meaning and value to God, and that is found in relationship to God. I want you to consider an analogy here. If you were to find a little device on the ground and you had no idea what it did, it just looked as strange, odd shapes and little bits and pieces, and you didn't know how it functioned, you didn't know what its purpose was, you could tinker around with it and try and investigate. You might use it as a door wedge, you might create these subjective purposes for it, but if you really, really wanted to know what this unusual object was for, you'd need to track down its maker, you'd need to find the designer, you'd need to go and take it to the designer and say, what on earth is this thing? What does it do? And in the same way, when we're trying to find our value and our purpose and our meaning, we need to get to our designer. We need to find the source and origin of humanity, of our life, the one that breathed life into us, and find out what our value is and what our purpose is and what our meaning is from that designer. And I believe that designer's made himself known in this universe. That designer has been revealed, and we can find this designer, but that's for another video. So I'm going to leave it there today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed engaging with these challenging and difficult questions. And if you understand what I'm saying, hopefully you're not going away feeling depressed, but you're going away feeling edified, excited, and encouraged that there is objective meaning and there is value and there is purpose to life. Not only that, I think there are good arguments that God exists that go beyond this, not just because it gives us some sense of value and purpose, but because the evidence and the reasons and the logic and the arguments point up. They point to God. So I'm going to leave it there today. Thank you for joining me today, guys. God bless you. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.